There's a question on this side.
Yes, thank you. My name is Carl Lukács. I'm with the DuPont Company, responsible for East Asia. And similar question to the previous one with regard to intellectual property protection. Thank you all for being here, and especially for addressing innovation this afternoon. Could you share with us your thoughts about the importance of intellectual property protection and enforcement here in Asia, and what activities you are promoting within your embassies to help us there? Thank you.
And there's a guy right next to him who can ask the next question. Go ahead. Any particular ambassador like to take on the intellectual property question? Director?
I'll say a word about it. The reason Singapore has enjoyed so much success and has attracted so much American investment is because of the strong IPR. The intellectual property regime is sort of the lead argument made by Singapore's economic developers. And that's a story, I think, that is not lost on the other countries, her neighbors in Southeast Asia, which is why I think the Signature Trade Initiative of the Obama administration, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, has to reflect the strongest, highest quality IP regime. So that's really, to me, what are the missions doing comprehensively is supporting our negotiating team and trying to help bring along our negotiating partners at the TPP table on IP. I use Singapore as Exhibit A for what strong IP rights can mean by way of attracting American investment.
We'll have Ambassador Roos and then Ambassador.
I would just add to that in my past life, I spent 25 years in Silicon Valley, and the protection of intellectual property, as we all know, is absolutely critical to the engine of growth. And we have the benefit here of both the United States and Japan has high standards and in the protection of intellectual property. And getting back to the discussion we had of setting the rules for the region, this is going to be one of the critical issues that our embassy, and I know all of the embassies here who are, we're all impacted by it, and our businesses are all impacted by it. So I don't think there can really be a higher priority than ensuring that as we progress with TPP and other efforts, that these rules-based initiatives follow the standard of those countries that do an outstanding job in the protection of intellectual property.
Go, Bill.
Let's let the director.
Taiwan has made enormous progress. 26 years ago when I first visited Taiwan, virtually all the books were often photocopies or at least rip-offs of certainly books that were from the United States. I mean, they've made enormous strides. The biggest problem we have now with IPR is China. Particularly our high-tech companies and increasingly Taiwan's high-tech companies, they don't know what to do because the attraction is to develop plants in China. And they're afraid that their technology will be stolen, as it often is. We currently have a big effort that's been led even by President Obama on cases where the largest single investor American company in Taiwan has had a problem because some of its employees, both in Korea and in Taiwan, have, through great material and other incentives, gone to China and basically stolen technology, passed it on, and they're now building plants that will potentially supplant what they're doing. So this is more of an international problem, really, and it's hard to get a fix on it. How we're going to handle it. One of the proposals we've been making at very high levels in Taiwan is that they have to strengthen the laws against commercial espionage. The penalties are simply too weak. I think there's a maximum of 2 years in prison. There's little flexibility on doing some of the things you need, such as being able to tap into computers to find out where people have been stealing things. So there needs to be a toughening of laws, domestic laws, to deal with the international problem.
Yeah, just to amplify some of those points and put it in broader context, when the President was out in Australia in November, he addressed a joint session of Parliament, and one of the key pieces of his speech was how central protection of intellectual property is to both of our survival, particularly as innovation economies. So when the TPP negotiations begin next week in Melbourne, that's going to be one of the critical focuses of the effort. Second thing that we're working on is cyber. And making sure that you don't have cyber theft, cyber exploitation. And we're working on about 10 different dimensions that way, both in terms of working with business, but also in terms of setting up cyber command and addressing it from the defense and national security side as well. In Australia, we do advocacy with American companies. You know, right now there's a big case before the High Court involving intellectual property theft through online file sharing programs, the INET case, and we coordinated with the Motion Picture Association of America. And then finally, in terms of enforcement, you may have heard about the big takedown of megaupload.com. You know, in case you're wondering, is this possibly engaged in some sort of criminal activity? Naming your website megaupload.com is probably, you know, a pretty good clue for our law enforcement personnel, and so there was a international takedown of that website, and we're going to throw the book at these folks if the charges are proved, because it is it is one of the central challenges for us as innovation economies moving forward.
My apologies to the gentleman. I'm going to have to. I wasn't expecting them to be so excited about the topic, so I'm going to open the floor to the press. Do we have any questions from the press in the back? If Japanese press is quiet, I'm going to allow that one last question. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I feel very lucky. My name is Ben Green. I am Vice President of Team Studio, which is a small software company based in Boston. And my quick question is, I first got over here in Japan through the JET program, which is a teaching program for English speakers that are, you know, that come over here from America, from Canada, etc. My question is, are there any mechanisms that we can put in place through either TPP or through, you know, free trade agreements, for example, to make it easier for Americans to come over on either internships or, you know, working visa arrangements, et cetera, like the French do and like Canadians do for, you know, New Zealand, Australia, et cetera?
We don't have something as large as the JET program, but we have an English teaching assistant program that under Fulbright is organized in Taiwan, and that brings about currently about 45, it's going to go up, 45 college graduates from America who go and live in relatively out-of-the-way places to teach English in primary and middle schools, and it's been quite successful. It's good for them, it's good for the Taiwanese students they work with. We're going to expand it to another county next year, so we'll be operating in 3 counties. But I'd certainly like to see more government, you know, well, in budget times it's hard, but to see more funding go into programs like that to give more exposure to Americans to living and working overseas and learning languages early on in life.
Well, in looking at the clock, it looks like it's time to close our question and answer session. So I'd like to ask Deputy Secretary Nides and ACCJ President Mike Alfont to come to the stage for the presentation of the small gifts. And while we're doing that, I'd like to ask my Chiefs of Missions to all stand and then circle, starting with Ambassador Roos, to the front of the stage so we can have our group photo. I would also like at this time to ask the members of the press to feel free to come forward, because this will be your opportunity to take photos of the panels. And I'd like to ask the audience for a great round of applause for this wonderful panel.